how much energy will this take? Will I have that much energy available at that time? Will I be able to recharge soon after? Is this the most valuable use of my time? Now, if I do say yes, will I actually feel energized or depleted by that decision? And will I feel energized or depleted after the opportunity? Did you know that there are between 30 to 50% of introverts in the workplace? That is staggering. And these workplaces are not really built for an introvert. Today, I'm going to talk to you about 4 master moves to be able to master introversion and rise to the top above all of your extroverted colleagues. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Success Blueprint. Now today we are diving into a topic that is close to a lot of you guys' hearts. Once again, following up on our very last video, where we talked about the total guide to introversion in the workplace. Now, if you're an introvert like a lot of people out there, I know I work with a ton of them, this video is going to be your guide to being able to thrive without pretending to be somebody that you're not. So let's get started. Now, obviously, there's so many different challenges that introverts face when in the workplace and business and things like that, right? Obviously, you've got networking, being able to speak up in meetings, and just being perceived as afraid, shy, standoffish, right? And so what I'm going to talk about today are some very easy steps to be able to master introversion. And if you have not seen our last podcast episode where we actually dived into being able to kind of understand the purpose of introversion, understanding like who they are, what introverts are like, kind of being able to break down a few different pieces, you should definitely want to watch that video as well right after this one as well. Now, today we're just going to talk about the first 4, but on our next video, we're going to talk about the next 3. So if you enjoy these kinds of different blueprints to success, make sure to like the video and subscribe for all the notifications as well. But with that being said, let's get to step 1. So first up, learning to speak extrovert. Now, you don't need to actually change who you are, but I think it's very important to understand how extroverts communicate, and that can really truly help you out in meetings, collaborations with them. And so a huge piece is that, like, obviously you want to be able to focus on short, clear messages with them, being assertive but polite. And I think that that's something huge for extroverts because they're really great at active listening, right? They're really great at like head nods, making eye contact, asking follow-up questions, being really in the moment. But I think it's very important for them to keep it short, clear, and concise. And so it's crazy because it's like learning to speak extrovert. Why do I, as the introvert, need to learn how to speak their language? All right, that's kind of the question that a lot of people have. And so it's like, before we even talk about why, I want to talk about like the how do you even get to the point of speaking someone else's language. Now, let's say that all your life you've wanted to learn French, but you go to French class, you have college and things like that. But unfortunately, you don't learn it really as fluently as you possibly could. However, if you spent 4 years in college learning French versus 4 years in France learning French, you're kind of forced to learn and forced to become fluent in French. And so you can practice reading books all the time. You can listen to these podcasts and things like that. But the one thing that's going to be able to allow you to speak extrovert fluently is actually being around them, being in the environment and kind of forcing yourself to understand how they speak. And that's the huge piece. And so you really need a reason to speak the language of extroversion in order to become fluent. And that's just very important. And so like if you actually never learn the language, then it forces other people to learn yours. And yeah, we can want other people to learn yours, but like, do you really truly want to complain that people don't speak your introverted language, right? Like, yes, there is a place for them as well. And also that's what we do here, so to allow them to understand and learn how to speak your language. But then others also need to learn from yours. And so if you can learn how to speak to them, then they can ultimately learn how to speak back, right? And so you should do everything you can to really learn their language, build while also building relationships in the process. That's gonna be huge. And so I love the term being bilingual when it comes to being an introvert, because it's like, well, what's the payoff? What's the payoff of being bilingual? Actually, I want to pull up the book here that I'm reading. So learning to speak extrovert is a perfect language choice for introverts. It's more than just knowing what words extroverts use, how they think. The process is ideally suited to our unique skill. And so becoming bilingual allows us to tap into our natural listening abilities, which as an introvert, you have such amazing listening abilities. It forces you to focus on what the extrovert is saying. So it takes attention off of you and puts it on them, which extroverts love. It's easier to approach an extrovert with these intentional questions as well. Right? It allows you to be able to jump ahead of it. And there's so many other things, so many great ways to be able to jump ahead and take control of situations, conversations with these extroverts. And so a couple of different actionable steps that I want to be able to give. Take small risks. Take small risks when it comes to communicating and talking to different extroverts. Those are going to be huge for them, right? As random things to extroverts, a lot of times we want to form the perfect statements and questions in our mind before we go and talk to them or whenever they ask us a question. But just ask random questions. It gets you more comfortable and more used to asking questions to these extroverts. Also, that's just a really good communication tip in general if you're very reserved and not open to talking to people as often or asking questions. Just ask random questions, especially to an extrovert. They will go on and on and on, right? Also, you want to practice often. What do I mean by that? How do you practice often? Well, get around as many extroverts as you can. Not all at once. It's going to destroy your energy. Don't worry, we're going to talk about managing energy shortly. Build those one-on-one relationships with those extroverts, as many of them as you can, and practice doing those things. Look for different opportunities to ask simple questions to different people, cashiers, bartenders, waiters, or whatever. But also, I love it because there's also the keep it simple, silly. There we go. Keep it simple, silly, and keep it simple often. The more the introverts are focusing on these complex things, it builds this anxiety into their head, which ultimately reduces their energy levels just by thinking about energy, by thinking about having to expend energy through interactions with others. And so that's gonna be huge. Another thing I like to say is, in order to learn how to speak in extrovert, you also have to read their literature. Read things from extroverts. Listen to their podcasts. Go and just listen to their speeches and things like that, because it'll get you a glimpse into understanding how they think and how they speak, the way that they behave, how their ideas present themselves. Just as an example, I am an extrovert. So if you are watching me, well, I'm kind of about 60% extroverted at this point. So if you're watching me, this is a great way to kind of understand just how I perceive the world and how I speak and share my ideas. You can find different articles written by them, take notes on them. I would take notes on what extroverts share, especially if you're in the workplace. And a great thing to do is, if you're listening and taking notes on extroverts, especially at work and business and things like that, meet with them afterwards to be able to listen to some more of the ideas about how they came up with these thoughts and these, and you also share some of your passion and ideas. So those are really awesome. And like my last step is give up on being perfect. Give up on being perfect. At Introverts, you guys will go and try and craft perfection in the moment, and that is extremely challenging for an introvert. Extroverts, they don't require perfection before they speak up or share things or open up. They don't require perfection. They figure they'll get to perfection while speaking, right? But it's different for you. So give up on perfection. Now, also in the workplace, a good handshake and a confident introduction, confident smile will always obviously go a very long way, especially while you're trying to speak extrovert. So I hope that helps. Step two is huge, because next we're talking about actually managing that energy. Introverts often find social interactions so very draining. It can be exhausting thinking about it. It can be exhausting there, and it can be exhausting afterwards. And there's a term that I love. It's called the extrovert hangover. Oh, no. It's called a social hangover, having a social hangover, which is something very true. And so this is super important, because if you're having to deal with social interactions as your job, just dealing with people. Schedule your day. If you're able to schedule your day on your own, schedule your day with breaks in between like different high energy, high level tasks, meetings, and interactions. This is going to be so huge and really truly help you out with being able to manage those performances. And so I want to actually talk about, and once again, this book is amazing. This book is The Introvert's Guide to Success in the Workplace. My dog tried to eat it up, so just like crazy Max. All right, so I actually have a great list of work situations that require introverts to expend energy. Now, if you're an introvert, you'll probably realize some of these. You probably also realize that some of these are not, or you probably would have never realized these are actually spending your energy. But it's great because if you can identify some of these, you can start to plan little 15, 20, 30-minute breaks before and after, which you should do, right? And if you're also if you're not an introvert and you're leading an introvert, encourage them to understand these, encourage them to take breaks. So work situations that require introverts to expend energy, attending meetings, obviously, especially when they are expected to contribute, right? Remember, we talked in the last episode that the beginning of the meetings are the perfect time for contributions from introverts. Not during the meeting, not to be called out, and also prior to the meeting, planning with them. Those are some amazing things and ways that show you these are times that these individual introverts need to regroup. They require energy. And so a huge piece is when you do plan that energy into your calendar, into your schedule, which please do that, please. It allows you to have these free hours. So that way you don't have these back-to-back meetings all day. If you have these free hours, you need to set boundaries. Don't make a phone call. Don't take a call. Don't shoot text messages about work. Make good energy choices to rebuild into yourself. You have to find what's going to allow you to pour back into yourself. Understanding how to say no. Getting to your calendar before somebody else does. If you manage your own calendar before someone else does, you can then say, no, I have to take a break during this time. I have to do this. I have to do that. And so it allows you to be able to evaluate your own needs. What do I mean by that? So this book is chock full. I want to make sure I brought in some really good steps for you guys. But how can you evaluate your own energy needs? How do you know what amount of energy you're going to need? How do you know how much you're going to expend that energy? If you're an extrovert, anytime an opportunity arises that you can choose whether or not to accept it, you consistently probably resist saying no. You probably say, I'll say yes. I have to say yes. You don't always have to say yes. But if you must say yes because it's for work or something like that, this is when you start to evaluate yourself and start to ask these questions. How much energy will this take? Will I have that much energy available at that time? Will I be able to recharge soon after? Is this the most valuable use of my time? Now, if I do say yes, will I actually feel energized or depleted by that decision? And will I feel energized or depleted after the opportunity? Last thing I really want to say, figure out what activities actually recharge you, all right? And then make an energy budget. This is the amount of time that I'm going to spend at this event. This is the amount of time that I have during the day to be able to give to other people and to be able to have different meetings. Schedule a long time so that way you don't end up with that social hangover. Things just like that. And so this is going to be super important. Now, I'll also say too, this is like a last little bonus tip. Leave events once you notice your energy levels getting lower and dropping. Do that. All right. Trust me, it's going to work very well for you and nobody's probably going to notice because the energy is dropping. Step 3, introverts really excel at gentle persuasion. All right, this is where introverts are thoughtful and their well-prepared ideas can have huge impacts. And it's typically very, very gentle. And so this is like where I have one business partner that I work with who has a lot of skills, and being able to talk with him and sharing with him what got him to those skills has helped me as an extroverted leader because then I can share a lot of those with other people. And he's come together and brought up really thoughtful ideas that are like literally really like laid out and planned and structured. Like, baby, what? Go sit down. Go sit down. I gotta do the podcast. And so he has really great ideas. And sometimes it can be really challenging for some people to understand how they got to being so skillful. But he understood. And so he was able to make a great training on how he got to where he is. And that built so many people and was so like memorable as well. And that was just huge. And so here's what I would say to you. Ask open-ended questions when you're speaking to other individuals. And also start utilizing your impact. You've got two different ways of getting people to do something, right? You can influence someone and have a direct impact on them, where let's say if you direct someone to do something, they did it because you told them to, right? They'll probably say, I did it because you told me to. But if you influence someone, which introverts have very natural skills of influence. If you influence someone to do something, they feel like, well, I did it because I wanted to. They might not notice that that introvert's part in what they did, right? Influence is much quieter, much subtler, much more subtle than being direct, right? But introverts really specialize in that inspiration instead of manipulation. And so when you look at the shape of it all, introverts are just really good at paying attention. They're experts at that. Right? They don't have to really make an effort to listen. And typically they don't speak until they actually have something to say. So if you're speaking with an introvert, especially as an extrovert, you're speaking with one, they're not speaking back just yet. They're probably processing some of the things you're saying and listening very deeply. And if you are that introvert, it's okay to say, hey, wow, that's incredible. This is amazing thoughts. Give me a second to think about that. That's all right, right? It allows them not to force the ideas onto the introverts, and then introverts. It allows you not to force ideas that are not well thought out of your head. And so your confidence is really going to help you out massively, and that preparation is going to speak volumes to so many different people. Step 4 is our last step of the day. Trust is key in any professional setting. And building trust by being consistent and reliable is so very important. I think following through on your commitments is what obviously builds so much trust, showing empathy, being a great listener. And those are things that introverts naturally are so good at. And so if you can maximize on that and making more commitments and showing that you can follow up much more, showing much more empathy, putting yourself out there to show much more empathy, and really just being a good listener. If you can talk to more people and have more relationships, you're going to build up so much more trust. All right. It can be challenging to build up trust if we're not speaking to people. One of the best ways that introverts build trust is literally through being a great listener, showing empathy, and actually making and following commitments. That's some of the best ways that they build trust. But if you're not taking the time to build that trust with someone, you won't build it. And so I need you to understand that there's no such thing as instant trust. No one's going to have instant trust. You have to build it as an introvert. You have to build it as an extrovert. And so people want real relationships. And so how can you identify that an introvert is someone that you can trust? Because they built those real, genuine relationships. They genuinely want to know about you. They're okay with building trust over time. And when they trust somebody, they start conversations with them, not waiting for others to start the conversations for them. And so you can tell if your introvert coworker or colleague trusts you because they'll start the conversations with you first. Now, experts, they're going to start conversations whether they know or trust somebody or not, right? They're A-okay with that. And let's talk about on the client aspect. Let's say you have a client. Your client, if they are an introvert, you'll know that they trust you when they speak first, when they start or initiate that conversation first. Otherwise, that extrovert to that extrovert leader to that, or businessman or whatever to that client, they are okay with having conversations with that person, whether they trust them or not. Yes, yet, right? Or even the vice versa, an extrovert client. They'll talk to you and they'll build those kind of relationships. And really, that's a good topic to bring up. Is just that It's not just about colleagues in the workplace. It's also about your customers and your clients and the people that you work for and with, right? Understanding some of them, because if you have an introverted client, some of these are also things that you also need to work on, right? It's following through your commitments, making commitments, showing them empathy, being a good listener. Extroverts, they're great at being able to present ideas, right, off the top of their head. They're great at being able to strategize in that moment. And so some of the advantages that introverts would have over others is just that they don't usually trust people until they get past the small talk, right? So if you're trying to make small talk, yeah, how's your day, right? Things like that aren't going to build trust as well. And that's quickly. They are generally patient enough to be able to wait until they build trust with somebody, until they start to actually pour into you and things like that, show their passion. But with that, they are obviously very skilled listeners, deep thinkers as well. They're gifted at being just good at observation. They tend to know themselves very well also. And so one thing, don't accidentally assume that an introvert doesn't know who they are. They know who they are very well, typically, because they spend a lot of time thinking about that. They're very careful and precise in their choice of words. They're very sensitive people as well, and also creative. They keep secrets very well, and they take relationships very seriously. I think that those are very important things. Now, don't get it twisted, right? Obviously, introverts might have a tough time trusting others, right? So how can you as an introvert work on building trust with an extrovert? I'll tell you, sometimes your biggest bet is just to take that risk. Like I said earlier, go first, take that initiative just to reach out to them. And extroverts are going to love conversation. They will almost always be open to any sort of attempt to connect. Like, they love it. What can you do for that? Well, you make an appointment to have those conversations, right? Because doing that results in building trust with them and back and forth, right? And trust me, like a lot of people, they are terrified of just like building up a relationship with somebody. And that's why you make the appointment. So that way, once again, you can build the time in ahead of time to build up some energy for that moment, right? Extroverts will always want to have a conversation right then in that moment, but you have to be very intentional about scheduling it so that way you can prepare your energy. All right. Now, what about if you have an extroverted leader and you're an introvert? Well, I think it's very important to start with what will be important to that extroverted leader, right? Whatever the case is, if there's something that you know that they believe in strongly, take care of that. Do that thing, right? Get the job done before you go and have that meeting and have that conversation with them to build up that trust. Also, respect them and their time. To make sure that you're coming prepared with things to be able to share and talk about, ask certain different questions, have a list of open-ended questions to be able to prepare as well. Some leaders, very much like me, I love seeing my team representing the team very well. That makes me feel amazing and just initially builds trust of them from me as well. So when you are in those meetings, especially, let's say you're brand new somewhere, set up expectations up front, set boundaries and expectations up front. Hey, I'm an introvert. I'm not saying that is an excuse. What I am saying is I need time to think about certain things is going to produce my best results, whatever the case is, right? But obviously be respectful. Always ask good clarifying questions whenever they're giving you directions about assignments, strategies, things like that. Also, I think another big thing is that a lot of times we try and hide from the leaders, or introverts try to hide from the extroverted leaders, but be very intentional about being visible. It'll allow them to see much more of your leadership. And also, one cool thing is like surprise them occasionally. But like the biggest thing is don't forget that trusting others is just as important as being being entrusting. Yeah. Anyway, whatever that word is, it creates a good positive environment for you and everybody else, right? So those are the 4 steps so far: learning how to speak extrovert, managing your energy, creating influence through gentle persuasion, building trust. Simple changes, they're going to have big results for you. And so thank you for watching. If you did find this helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more tips on thriving as an introvert in the workplace. Make sure you check out that last episode that we posted. And also, whenever that new episode comes out, on the final 3 steps, which are nurturing emotional intelligence, customizing your own work environment, and ensuring success through intentional preparation. It's going to be great. I enjoyed this with you guys today. See you guys next time. Bye.